Scripting for success using Lifecycle Actions. By the end of this video, you will be able to successfully create your own basic lifecycle action. You will learn what a lifecycle action is and why it is beneficial to your organization. Let's explore lifecycle actions. What is it and why use it? Lifecycle actions, otherwise referred to as an LCA, is a feature in LOD that triggers an event during the life of the lab instance. The two main features of an LCA are sending information and executing scripts to send information, such as triggering a remote API with the lab instance data, or sending emails to a user, and most often used to send user notifications regarding the lab instance. An example of this would be if you were to notify a user of a successful cloud deployment. We support PowerShell, Windows Command, and Bash. So why use LCAs? While there are several reasons you'd want to use an LCA, the most common is that you can save some time for your students and instructors if your lab environment requires additional steps to set up. Let's dive into action, and for this demonstration, we're going to build an LCA. The LCA that I'm going to show as an example is going to execute a simple script against a single virtual machine, and it's going to pre-populate some files so that when we launch the lab, we're going to see those files and see it in action. I'm going to start by navigating to the lab profile page, and I'm going to click Edit Profile. As discussed here in the virtual machine, I have a single virtual machine. So right now, the lifecycle action that we build will only run against this single virtual machine. But let's say we have multiple machines in here. You can actually select which machine you want your lifecycle action to run up against. So as we head over to the lifecycle actions, you can see here I can add a lifecycle action. If you're new to LCAs or to Lab on Demand, you can hover over the tooltip icon. And what that's going to do is it's going to give you a brief overview of features, or it's going to give you some more explanation about the options in what the field means and what you can choose from. So I'm going to hit Add Lifecycle Action, and just to go back to the tooltips, I can see here as I hover over the events tooltip, I can see what options I have to pick from that field, and in particular, when I want my lifecycle action to be executed and at what point during the lab instance it is. So that's a really neat feature. One of the things that you're probably going to use the most is the pre-build, post-build, and first displayable, but there are other ones there for you if you really want to go and delve a little deeper into some of the different types of LCAs and different parts of the lab environment. So I'm going to start by giving my lifecycle action a name, and for here I'll call it the demo. The next, I'm going to select what action I want. And so for here, you have multiple options to choose from. And one of those is send a web request. And you might use this if you have your users collecting data in the VM. And during the teardown stage, you want that data to be sent to a server away from LOD so that you can review it, and you can absolutely do that. Or maybe as I'm going to build mine out, I want my users to know, hey, this VM is not quite ready because we're doing some scripting, and once it's ready, you can go ahead and start. And I can do that by informing my users when I send them a notification. And this notification is going to show up in the virtual machine's UI. But for this particular case, I'm just going to create a execute script in the virtual machine. The next is the event. So when do I want this to happen? So I'm going to want it when it's first displayable. And what that means is this script is going to run for the first time when the user can interact with a virtual machine. A quick note on this one, so blocking right here, if you have a series of LCAs, you can force a specific LCA to run first and complete before any of the others do. So if you have an LCA that is dependent on another LCA or a action within inside the VM, you can go ahead and put that blocking on. You'd want to make sure you click on it and that you get the checkbox. And next, we're going to pick the target machine that I'm trying to run this against. So as I said, I only have a single virtual machine here, but let's say you've got multiple. All of your VMs will show there, and you can select which one you want it to run against. Since this is a script, we do have different languages that you can write this in PowerShell, Windows Command, and Bash. Well, I'm going to create mine in PowerShell, so I'm just going to leave it as PowerShell. The next one is kind of an interesting one, and it is this delay. And if you are running this LCA while the student is inside the virtual machine and you see that there's going to be some delays, it's usually a good idea to set a delay so that way you know that all of the services that you're calling upon are up and running after the first display. You can set this if you need to, but keep it in mind, you really want to do seconds. So in general, I would probably do no more than 20 seconds or so. For what I'm particularly trying to achieve, I'm going to add a 20-second delay. This timeout is if the VM is up and running and the script can't execute, I want to go ahead and create a timeout. So I'm saying, hey, this has not worked after 10 minutes. And so what that will do is define the error below. So when we look at this error below, this error action, there are some features here that we can pick from. While it is not necessary for anyone to do this, it's more for troubleshooting, and it's really handy if you're doing a cloud deployment. So the log option, all that does is if there is a problem, it's going to go ahead and throw out an error, and it will show in the lab instance data. The students will never be notified. So if you want to know a little bit more to why that particular script didn't work, you can go ahead and add the log feature. The next one is notify users, and it's one that I personally really like because if your script has an error, it's acknowledged the error and then it's going to send that message to the lab UI. And that way you can kind of see what's going on when you launch the lab. And let's say you have something going on and the student is working, they're able to see this and they can address it in the launch before they go further in to your lab. Also, what's really cool is when you are building and developing this, if you have the notify user on and the script doesn't work, you know before what's going on, so you can go back and you can fix the script. And then finally, there is an end lab, and that's self-explanatory. It does what it says. If the script fails, then the lab instance will immediately end. That's not always the best option for students, but if you have a lab that is cloud deployed or deploys resources that are crucial to the lab success and they fail for whatever reason, you probably don't want to have your students stuck in an instance that isn't going to work for them. So it would be better to just have them, let's say, relaunch. And this is the one that we use for production, and it's mostly used for cloud deployment labs. So for this demo, I'm going to simply go ahead and notify the user. And again, I can add my error message here saying this script failed. And that's all it will do, all it will say inside the virtual machine in the UI if this fails. Right now, we're moving right into the scripting piece. And what I'm going to do is I have pre-set up a script. And I'm going to go ahead and pop it in here just to show you the script. And what it's going to do is it's a simple PowerShell. It's going to put a folder on the desktop, and then it is going to put a text file inside. And what we're going to do is we're going to click OK, and we're going to click Save. So you can see here's my script. I've hit OK. I'm going to go ahead and hit Save. I'm going to add my note, which is adding an LCA, and it's always important to add those notes. While it is optional, it's always great to inform people of what you've done that particular time. And now all we're going to do is launch the VM. And just to save some time, what we did is we went ahead and launched the VM. Now remember, we put that 20-second delay on. So as of right now, we're just waiting for the LCA to run. And soon you will see the lab file folder has been added to my desktop, and we added a text file called launch. I have given you a quick demonstration of how to create a simple LCA for your lab environment, but you can do things like store files in GitHub and automatically go retrieve them and pull them into your virtual machine. That way you don't always have to necessarily keep updating your instructions every time. So with the right skills and the amount of time that you want to put into developing the LCAs, there are so many possibilities that you can do. We do highly recommend LCAs as a way to save time in your classroom by having the LCA complete some of those mundane steps that you really don't want your user to having to do. Once you've created them, you can always reuse them in other labs. You do have to copy and paste them in the same way that we just built one, but there is a really good tool for you to use. You can modify the basic elements to suit the things that you need and for your students. We look forward to seeing what you can do with LCAs.